Hello, beautiful listeners. Welcome to another episode of You Are Poetry podcast, the place where we dive deep into the oceans of self-discovery, self-belief, and the endless journey to finding our true selves. I'm your host, Rheta, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here with me today. We're talking about something really, really wonderful. This next topic is really, really interesting because I tend to be the type of person who goes through life, and I usually say I don't have any regrets. I don't have any strong things that have happened in my life that I wish I could do, over again. And I'm reading this book. I'm not all the way through it, but the book for my book club this month is The Midnight Library, and it starts out, under the premise that this woman is very unhappy with her life as it has been unfolding for her. She's still very young, but she feels like the trajectory of her life is not going to change. And she gets into kind of this apathy, and she feels, just kind of useless. Like nothing she's doing is changing any circumstance for not only herself, but for others. And it got me kind of thinking about, my own life and the stories that I hear from different women who I come into contact with who have different perspectives. So we have moms who have already raised their children. We have women who have already made career decisions and perhaps they're in retirement. I have women who I speak to who are thinking about transitioning back into a career after being at home with kids. I mean, there's a multitude of different choices that we can make. And that's what this book is centering on. Like I said, I didn't finish it yet. I'm looking forward to finish it. It's actually like a page turner. It's really great. If you haven't read it, read it with me. It's really, really exciting to think about the possibilities in life, the way that life can unfold for you based on the decisions that you're making. There's also this interesting idea that I always think about, which is the small decisions that you make and how those kind of build upon your life in a way that seems insignificant in the moment, but it becomes more significant as your life unfolds. So with that in mind, I thought it'd be a great time to have a conversation about regret, about feeling like if I could do something over again, what would I do differently? I ask people who I come into contact with when they're sharing anecdotes about their experience or their life. I often find that I ask them, what would you tell yourself if you could go back, or if you were in my position, what would you tell yourself then? How would you advise yourself? And so then I try and get some insight from now them having the wisdom and the time that needed to pass for them to be able to have a perspective on what they went through, and also some solutions about perhaps if I had made this choice at this time, I would have had this outcome. I think that, and that's what that book, The Midnight Library, goes into. It's set up where this woman really just does not have any more reason to live. She feels like she's made all the choices that she's made, and they pretty much have led her to where she's at, and they were the wrong choices. And so there's a lot of regret that she's mulling over. And she ends up in this interim where she is not quite dead and not quite alive, right? So there's this middle point. And in our book club, we're going to kind of discuss what we think, these themes mean and how they resonate with us. But with you, I want to talk about the library idea that this book presents, which is there are all of these different books. I mean, millions and millions and millions. She can't even see, like the vast amount all in one room. She can't even fathom how many books are laid out in front of her on these shelves. And a librarian is kind of her guide. And she sets the story up as, you can pick a book, and each book is about the unfolding of your life if you had made a different choice at different times. So um, I can't give you a spoiler because I haven't finished the book, but in the first couple of chapters, it's revealed that one of her strong regrets is that she called off her wedding a few days or a few hours before it was supposed to happen. So, of course, the logical regret was, I should have married him. And how would life have been different had she chosen to marry him? And she's also in a band, and she never really pursued that. How would her life have been different if she stayed in the band and signed a record contract, and and so on? I can imagine that there's going to be lots of different storylines that kind of send the same message. Great book. Great start to the book. I could barely put it down. I kept reading for a few hours. I'm sure I'm going to get through it. I will come back and follow through and maybe share some thoughts if you're interested in talking about some of the books that I've read. So when we're talking about regret, I just want to take it from the angle of motherhood. And I've compiled a list of about 15 regrets that moms typically have after raising their kids. And it's really just to start a conversation with other people in your life or with yourself about, instead of waiting till you're done raising your children, if you're fortunate enough to still be a mother within the thick of it right now, raising your children, perhaps you still have time to make different choices. And I think that's probably the best way to use the insights and the wisdom of women who have walked before us, is to apply it to our life right now. So I'm going to talk about the 15 regrets that moms typically have after raising their kids. And we, the mothers who are currently still in the thick of raising our children, are going to figure out ways to avoid these choices. So let's talk about it. Number one, not slowing down and enjoying the everyday moments. If I was to start to look at my life in segments of weeks, I would say that I'm usually saying, okay, we've gotten through the weekend. How do we get to the next weekend? How do I get through the week? So many times the schedule is so busy with the children and their activities and the middle part of, getting them dressed, getting them fed, getting them to school, and all of the things that are on the to-do list every single day. I can look up and I can say, oh my gosh, we just got through that week. It's such a minimizing idea to think that our life is deduced or reduced to just getting through the day or just getting through the week. But when you have so much on your shoulders, it's a very natural thing to do. I don't really like to look at the calendar and to see like even a couple of weeks in advance. It's too overwhelming to me. So I say to myself, ultimately, I'm going to deal with the day. I'm going to deal with what is on the plate today that I can handle. Because if I start looking forward, I don't get excited. I don't get revved up by that, stuff that's on the calendar. I get overwhelmed by it. And a typical reaction to being overwhelmed is just being stressed out. And I don't like to be in that state for too long. So I try to relax a little bit, just take it hour by hour, afternoon by afternoon with the kids. And part of that mindset can easily make my life with the children all about just checking the boxes. So slowing down and being very present and appreciating the small things that come up as opportunities to connect with your children and to connect with people is really important to cultivate. One way I do that is trying to be more lighthearted. So I was talking with my mom friends the other day. We were having coffee, And we were talking about something, in regards to our approach to raising the kids. And I had just said, you know what? I think I'm too serious. And, another mom agreed with me that she was too serious too. But then she said, well, what I do is I try and play. I try to introduce play in whatever we're doing. So I'm serious that I have to get the kids, showered and bathed and ready, for nighttime or whatever. But to get them to participate and so that it's not so serious, make a game out of it. And, you can use your imagination about what kind of games you can make that can get your kids, to do what they need to do. One game I like to play, which is kind of competitive and it works for my dynamic of my kids who are about 3.5 years apart, two children, boy and a girl. And they, I'm like, who's going to get to the car and get buckled in first? And I'm included, I get my stuff and, try not to beat the kids every single time, to the car. But we just will sometimes make games out of things that seem really mundane. What you're really doing is you're slowing down and you're appreciating the fact that everything is not a checklist item. Everything doesn't have to be done in such a rigid way. And there's space for laughter and there's space for enjoyment. And if you are a mom or a parent who deals with something that I know a lot of my friends deal with, which is the constant yelling and then feeling really bad about yelling, then this might be something you want to start practicing so that you don't regret looking back after your kids are older that, oh my gosh, time flew by, and time does go by pretty quickly when you're raising your children, and you didn't appreciate those little moments and those little things that ultimately, hold a lot of the joy, right, of childhood and the joy of parenthood. So I hope for you and for myself that we can slow down a bit and enjoy the everyday moments. Number 2, not setting better boundaries with technology. So I think that I probably talk about iPads and phones and video games and stuff probably 3 to 4 times a week with my kids and with my mom friends. And it's either some type of battle that I'm having about getting the kids off of the screen time or holding the line and the boundary for screen time that I have set and established with my family and with the kids, and the pushback and the friction that I receive about holding that boundary. And I came to kind of this saying now where I don't know if you guys have experienced this. I'm pretty sure all of us have, where your kid is like, you're the worst. like you're ruining everything, by taking the iPad away. And I was really getting emotional and my feelings hurt about being told I'm the worst, and I started thinking, oh, am I being too strict? Am I being ridiculous about this? Ever since we had the kids, the pediatrician and all of the studies and stuff say that children should not be exposed to a lot of screen time and that you should be aware of this. So I almost feel like we're kind of hyper aware of it. And then when we had the shutdown and the pandemic and things like that, we had a heavy reliance on occupying the children and keeping them entertained and being able to do other things, right, in the house with the kids often requires to be sitting at the table and to be doing things with them until they get older. And now my son sits down and he reads his books and he looks at his, toys and builds things and whatever. He's more self-led. So it's a slippery slope, I would say, about technology. But this is number 2. Number 2, moms regret not setting better boundaries about technology. One thing I would say, especially since I'm only dealing right now with the entertainment aspect of technology, there's a whole other area of technology that has to do with communication. And we're talking about cell phones, we're talking about watch phones, we're talking about computer time, like laptops, access to the ability to have communication. And that actually does extend into gaming as well. A huge component of gaming right now is about, communicating with the other players, whether it's a chat room, whether it's a direct message. That's something that also needs to be identified and regulated based on whatever your family's values are. But I could see being in the midst of this and holding the line for my family. I can see how you could just say, forget it. I'm tired of the arguments. I'm tired of the fights. Fine, here's a phone. Fine, here's your laptop. Fine, I'll just take my hands off of it. I believe if that was what I was deciding to do, because I just didn't want the fights and the friction and the issues about it, I would regret that. And I would regret it on a couple different levels. I would regret it because there are other things that young minds need to be occupied with that have nothing to do with the overstimulation of video content. It's hard to stop the deluge of information that your child becomes exposed to. So I equate it to like when I was a kid, you sat and you watched TV, but TV had commercials. You had 30 minutes of programming, 30 minutes of commercials. And you had to have the patience, really, to sit through the commercial to get to the content again. And so I remember a lot of the shows that I watched, were set up that way. Now you have 30 minutes of content, period. So if you give your child an hour of screen time on their laptop or their iPad, they have a full concentrated hour of content. And if you're aware of TikTok, you should at least try these apps that your kids are being exposed to. You should have an account. You should try it. You should see what they see from their perspective and make a decision on if that is for your family, if it's in alignment with your family's values or not. And how kind of hack it, figure out how you can be comfortable, because nobody's in a bubble. So how can you be comfortable with your children using the different devices? Because they're not the same across the board. And there's different things to be concerned about. So I would say, be really careful about not paying any attention to technology and kind of applying it's all the same attitude towards it. The phone on their wrist and them giving out their phone number and then text messaging with their friends is going to have a different impact on them than a phone that they downloaded an app and now they're scrolling through, content that is not edited or regulated specifically for their age or just their family's, idea of what's appropriate and things like that. So I would say having the hands-off approach and just letting it be a thing that your children kind of self-explore, I would have a ton of regrets. So I definitely understand that. And my stand on technology is that I try to put my eyes on whatever they're putting their eyes on. And that means if I have to read a book before they read a book, or if I have to read the book with my child as they're reading, I'll do that sometimes. If I have to just sit down and watch a film with them, or if I have, whatever it takes, essentially, in order to make sure that the technology aspect does not become so large an influence in your child's life that they They just move away from your opinion and your influence, and they're relying on external influences. I think that makes a lot of sense why that would be a regret. Number 3, feeling overwhelmed and not taking care of their own well-being. So neglecting your own self-care and constantly feeling run down and ragged. Uh, I've been there. I've done that. I hopefully have gotten to the other side of that, so I can tell you from experience that doesn't set me up to be a better mom. The self-sacrificing element of motherhood, I believe, is overblown. You automatically have a human life that is relying on you, like 100% relying on you. And even though you get these small increments of independence as they get older, where some of those things that they used to rely on you about, like carrying them around in your arms because they can't crawl, carrying them around in a stroller because they can't yet walk, like those type of things, yes, incrementally they get more independent, so they need those interventions less from you. But there's never an element where everything that you give to your child is a self-sacrifice. I actually think you end up giving not just your children, not just your spouse, but everybody less than what not only they deserve, but you deserve to give, because you are not 100%. And when I say 100%, I don't mean you have to look 100% all the time or feel 100%. What I mean is we can't buy into the idea that I don't eat because you need to eat. That idea. I don't shower, but I bathed you, right? Like that becomes, over time, that becomes unhealthy. Now, I'm not saying that I haven't skipped a shower because my child was, up and required a lot of my energy and I was exhausted. I'm not talking about these moments in time where you make different decisions based on what the priority is in the moment. I'm talking about a long-term pattern of I don't have any energy left over because I've been caring for other people and other people's, life, that I don't pour into mine. So I'm a big believer of pouring into yourself and maintaining a full cup, and hopefully an overflow occurs where I have poured so much into myself that the overflow, the excess energy that I feel, because I feel good, I feel loved, I feel, total, I feel capable. The overflow of that is a benefit to the people around us. And it's situational. When your baby first comes home from the hospital with you, there's a huge, massive learning curve. There is a huge, time where you're trying to figure it out. And you are figuring it out and you're saying, this works, this doesn't work. And a lot of it's just survival. When I was breastfeeding and, I'm breastfeeding around the clock essentially and pumping. And I'm also trying to figure out how to make sure I'm having the right amount of calories to be able to breastfeed and, and things like that. So I would say that I completely understand that if you get to the end of the mommying journey and you have a regret that you didn't take care of your own well-being, I would say I completely agree with that. And I wonder if it's avoidable, honestly, because at this point, there is always an opportunity cost. And an opportunity cost means that in order to make a decision to do something, you've made a decision to not do something else. And so that is a cost. That's a cost based on the opportunity that you took. And so you didn't have an opportunity to take the other thing. And so it's a loss for you. And the way that you view it or your perception of that loss determines what your priorities are. And I've known moms who've done both. I've known moms who have gone through pregnancy and they've worked out every single day, and they did not experience the weight gain that I experienced for sure, with my children, and how hard it was to lose it, and to regain being fit and regain, my energy levels and things like that. So if you don't want to regret that, then I would say make self-care a priority, and teach your daughters and your children that self-care is not a luxury. It is the bare minimum that your body and your mind and your spirit requires to be a fully functional, fully developed person. And even though that might fluctuate based on the situations, it's never something you can just get rid of and say, I'm just not going to take care of myself because I'm taking care of other people. I don't think that will ever really sit right with most people. It doesn't sit right with me. So I'm a big advocate for everybody taking what they need, and having the confidence and the courage to say what they need and then to get it. I would say sleep. I would say sleep. The biggest form of self-care for me, looking back now, wasn't so much the going to the gym and the eating well and all that stuff. I think it definitely played a significant role, but I would say sleeping. I should have been more vocal about the amount of sleep that I required to feel like myself again. I still remember the first time I got real sleep, and I did a program. So I was it's a long story, but I did a program, and my baby was 6 months old, and I was sleeping on campus at the dorms, and baby couldn't stay with me and stayed with daddy, and I went to sleep, and it was probably day one. I mean, I remember the feeling more than the timeline, but it was probably day one or day two when I went to sleep, and I woke up the next morning pretty early, like easily without an alarm or anything, and I felt like myself again. That's how powerful going to sleep can be for resetting you as a person. So don't regret that. Take care of yourself. Number 4, not cherishing the moments and focusing too much on chores. So getting caught up in the busyness of life, and then you don't savor these really beautiful moments that you have with your children. That's a regret for many moms. I would say that my son is really funny because he will make comments about it when he notices that I don't play with him. He'll just straight up tell me, you're doing too many chores. Your chores must be more important than me. Can you come on the floor and play with me? And he would just verbally ask for what he needed, which is great. And I would start thinking about it like, what? How, like the house is going to like crumble around us if I don't keep on track of these things. But what I realize is that laundry can pile up, dishes can pile up, things can get done at other times. And it doesn't all have to be done in one day or, in one moment, that you really can be present in the thick of it with your children, and not trade your child's time with your house chores or things that need to get done. And of course, that varies. There's different degrees of priorities. There are plenty of parents who are working from home and who have to prioritize doing other things besides building things with Legos or, whatever with your children. I'm not talking about those moments. I'm talking about the moments where you're doing something that could honestly be done at any time. And I'd say that because I grew up with my mom, doing her chores and things while we were sleeping. So it was never really a trade-off because she was working. So it was never a trade-off between her, not playing or reading or, engaging with her children versus she's going to mop the floor. And I would say if it really bothers you, and I know I like to clean, it's relaxing to me. So if it really bothers you, if it's something that you're like, I cannot avoid doing the laundry or folding the laundry or whatever, I would just say include the kids if you can. So again, that idea of like playing might be really, really a game changer for that one. Number 5, giving in to material desires and not teaching gratitude. So a big regret would be like giving your kid everything they wanted and wished for. And I mean, the opposite side of that coin is that if everything is given to you so easily, then you haven't really earned it. So then how can you really be grateful for things that are just handed to you? I think gratitude and being thankful, having the spirit of being thankful for what you have really needs a larger conversation for children, because how could they know that things are hard to get when you snap your fingers and things arrive on your doorstep, like at the Amazon package. Oh, I wanted this toy, mom clicked the button, it arrived at the house. Great, that's how life works. So I think the conversations have to be centered around gratitude, being grateful for what you're blessed with, grateful for what you're experiencing, because the story would be that you could not have these things. I mean, ultimately, when I start thinking about the way I tell the story to my children about the importance of being thankful is by giving them a example. The best ones are actually real, that they actually really see, by what would be the alternative to having this would be to not have it, or to not have as much of it, or to not have it as frequently. So we as moms, as adults, as parents, we have a lot of perspective. If you're an older parent, and I say older just meaning you have some years clocked behind you or some experiences clocked behind you, that gives you a really beautiful quality, and that is perspective. And that means that you look at the things you've been through, you look at what you have learned, and you say, what was the lesson? What was important for me to know out of that situation, out of that experience? And then you share that with others. That's what I do on this podcast. So this is what we need to be doing with our children. That's why we're so valuable to our children, because we have perspective on the things that they haven't yet experienced, so that we can give them depth and we can color their experiences so that it serves them and it uplifts them and gives them the wisdom that they're going to need to navigate through life and its ups and its downs. So it's important to know that, like with my kids, I will draw comparisons to other families that we know. And I will say, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I make a warm breakfast for you in the morning. Do you remember when you went to such and such's house and they had a cold breakfast in the morning? Which do you prefer? You like that mommy's here to make you your favorite dish in the morning? Do you like that mommy's here, to do this or to do that? Be grateful and thankful for that experience, because that's not everybody's experience. And it wouldn't be your experience if I went to work, and had to have a sitter or a nanny do it for you, or a family member do it for you, or whatever the situation. So giving my children the full picture, I think, is really important in cultivating and teaching them what gratitude, not only feels like being grateful for something, but what it looks like, so that they can apply that whenever they see situations and they say, I'm really grateful it's about seeing the contrast of situations. I'm really grateful to have my bike because other kids maybe don't have a bike, or whatever the scenario is. It gives your children borrowed perspective so that they can learn how to cultivate gratitude and the spirit of being thankful for the things that they have. Another regret, number 6, not being present and fully engaged with their children. So some moms regret not being fully present and giving their children the attention that they may need. This one is kind of, we've talked about this, the idea of slowing down and being really present. I believe that this would be something that you can just kind of sprinkle in along the way. Being fully engaged, so like showing up 100%. So if you're reading, this is something I have to do, right? Like I read stories to my children every night. I hope to do it for many, many, many years. And I really have to kind of remind myself each time I sit down to do it, just to be doing that, not to be like having my phone to the side and like thinking of scrolling or doing, something else on my phone, not thinking about what am I cooking for dinner or do I need to put the other load of laundry in? Like not being physically there, but mentally absent. That's what I would say. That's what I coach myself to when I'm about to fully engage with my kids. Not every time, but most of the time, I'm kind of aware that I've got to tell myself, shut off all of the distractions, stop thinking about what's happening in the next 30 minutes or an hour, and just be here. Be here, be now, and really enjoy it, so that you don't regret it later when your kids are fully grown and they're not asking you to read them the bedtime story. That's another thing is my husband and I will remind each other if we have like short patience or we're tired and we just want to get the nighttime routine over with. We remind ourselves, hey, one day my kid's not going to want to ask me to tuck them in. One day my kid's not going to ask to be the last person to kiss them goodnight. One day my kid's not going to ask me for the third storybook where they hear my voice reading, their favorite book. Like one day we can all say that our children's needs are going to be different. So because I don't know how many days of this I'm going to do or, my kids are going to want, then I'm going to use this time, this moment. I'm going to treasure it. I'm going to cherish it, and I'm going to show up and be 100% here so that's not a regret. Let's move on to number 7. Moms regret not setting boundaries and discipline effectively. So clear boundaries and discipline strategies with their children are not established, and so they regret that. I think the proof becomes the pudding, right? So the proof is in the pudding. And I say that meaning, how do I know that I told my kid enough about a topic or enough about something that it's ingrained by the time they get to college? I won't have to see the proof of the pudding that I absolutely did not set a strong enough boundary in that area. It's hard to know. It's hard to know. So I like to just kind of assume that this is going to be important later. And the way I make that determination is, what do I wish I had known when I was going through a situation, when I was going through a hard, time in my life or adversity or a challenge? What do I really wish someone had told me that stayed with me, that I had that tool in my toolbox so I didn't have to go through all that pain and friction and issue with that moment? And I would say, getting up early, right? Like we tell our kids, get up in the morning, and stuff. But for me, I make it very clear that there should be discipline associated with consistent schedule. So I know that is an area that I continue to hold the boundary and express, that is important, because I know later in life, in my personal experience, I really needed that. I needed that to be so well established that by the time it became applicable, it was easy. It was not something that had to, like I wasn't in college, like dragging myself out of bed to get to lecture. I actually preferred early morning lectures because I was already up, you know? So I think that we don't have to regret setting the right boundaries and effectively disciplining when we take a little bit of time to remember what we struggled with or what our pain points were and what we had to learn maybe the hard way or we wish that we had known because it really would have made a difference for us, saved us time, saved us energy, saved us the pain of a situation. And then sprinkle that into your parenting. Number 8, not seeking help or support when needed. This one took me a long time to develop. So I can see how moms would regret this later. Not seeking help or support when you feel overwhelmed or you're struggling. I will say that this one, number 8, is like a game changer for motherhood, for womanhood, for life. Being able to ask the right people at the right time to help you with the right problem is amazing. It is amazing. It is a game changer. Just like the idea that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. I say that a lot. I feel like that's true. Many times you're not ready to go through something, and so you hesitate, to like ask the teacher who would know the right answer or the right application, and the right time to do something. You hesitate and you waver and you second guess and you question yourself and you suffer needlessly, when there was someone who could have helped you out of that situation a lot faster, a lot quicker, and a lot better than what you could have done. I think that we don't ask for support enough. I think we have, this is a separate thing I want to talk about on a different episode, but we have a really, really painful ache in our communities about loyalty. And when I say loyalty, I mean I'll talk about loyalty at a different time because I really what I wanted to say was loneliness, that we have a community ache of loneliness. But perhaps I said loyalty because we don't have a strong enough loyalty to our friendships and relationships to feel safe enough to ask for help, like to be vulnerable enough to ask for help. So I could see why my mind would go to loyalty. That's going to be kind of a separate conversation. But loneliness, meaning you feel like you have to do everything yourself. You have to go through everything yourself, and you have to support yourself, and you have to have this rock solid, capability to get through adversity, and you have to have all of this grit and all that stuff. And it's wonderful if you have that. It's even better if you can teach yourself how to have it. But it's not necessary, right? That's the whole point. So when you're going through, motherhood, there are so many questions. There are so many problems that come up. There are so many situations, and they all seem very singular. Like that's one thing I will say, being on the other side of that and really having no problem asking for the help that I need at any given point now, is that initially when I did have the struggle of asking for help, there was this idea that I was the only person going through it, and it was like really complicated. And anything that I would say in regards to asking someone would be misconstrued as complaining or being negative. And what insight could they have to offer me anyway? And that's not true. We go through such similar things that there's really no reason for any of us to not have our hand held through this entire journey called life. We really, really need to show up more in people's life for support, for non-judgmental support, and for offering of service to others. I feel like we need to really seek out those type of relationships. Um, so I can definitely see how not seeking help or support when you need it happens in motherhood. And you probably get to, becoming a grandmother, becoming an aunt, becoming, some advisor or support system for a younger mom, or you know what I mean? So that you realize, oh my gosh, like I wish I had have asked about this. I could have not suffered as much, right? So then you step up and you help another mother. I can't tell you how many times when I had my babies out and about and I was just by myself, I'd have them, putting them in the car seat, putting them in the stroller, and going on about your day and stuff. And I would be getting groceries and without fail, another woman would say, let me help you with that. You know what I would say? Thank you so much. It's exactly what I need. I needed 2 extra hands. Sometimes you need 4. I needed help with that cart. I needed help with that stroller. I didn't have a clue how to push a button and get that stroller, to pop out and then to put it back together. And yes. So, the regret of not seeking the help or the support, but I would also say you would probably regret not accepting the support and the help. And that's from everybody. It takes a village means that there are skills that people in your village or your tribe or your group of people around you, there are skills that they have that you can borrow. And you should borrow. You should be happy to borrow those skills. My father-in-law came over when baby was fresh from the hospital and stuff, and he walked, because he walked every day anyway, but he walked with baby and the stroller every single afternoon. That was his skill. It took a village, and he was the village afternoon walker. And he walked baby every single day. So I could depend on that. I could rely on that. I could take a nap. I could eat. I could take a shower. I could do other things knowing baby was in great hands in my village, right? And so accepting the help and the support is also really big. Number 9, not prioritizing their own dreams and aspirations. Some moms regret putting their own dreams and aspirations on hold while focusing solely on their children. Oh, such a big one. The only remedy to not regretting putting yourself on hold, whether it be self-care or self-goals, like aspirations to do other things outside of motherhood or inside motherhood, the only remedy to that is to tap in to yourself and know what really sparks the light inside of you and what you have to give, and then give it to whatever capacity that you can give. I have so many books that I want to type out and write and everything, and it's only now at this point. I've always had that ambition, and it's only now at this point that I can find these times and these moments where I'm not necessarily ignore my kids or taking time away from them to pursue things. I think it's important to not take the fact that you think you have all of this time laid out in front of you to do other things later, to not take that as a standard, because you don't know, number one, and number two, I believe that you can give and be of service in whatever capacity along the way. And I think it's important. I know it's really, really important to spread that message because can, your dreams are large enough. They create enough space to exist while you're living your life, if that makes sense. And I didn't know that for a long time. I always thought it was either or. Either I'm a writer or I'm a mom. Either I'm this or I'm that. And two things can be true at the same time. And that is such a powerful message for mothers to understand because a lot of your identity becomes wrapped up in raising your children. And then our children become adults and they move on and they go out into the world and they fly. And you're wondering, oh gosh, now what? And what could I have done along the way that would have prepared me for this now what phase that I'm in? So I believe your dreams create enough space for you to live your life. So I'm going to say I understand why that would be a big regret. Live your dreams, girls. Live your dreams right now. No excuses. Number 10, not fostering independence and self-sufficiency in their children. Some moms regret not encouraging their children to be more independent and self-reliant. So I have a really great thought process about this. And essentially, I always think about it as I am raising my children to be fully capable, fully formed people. People that I like, people that I respect, people that I admire. They are to learn and to glean all of the wisdom and insight that they can while they're around me and while I have them in my little cocoon here. And then they're going to take that and they're going to do even more than what I was even capable of doing. That's my mindset about parenthood. I take no ownership over them so much that I want them to be able to do my job and do it better than me. And my husband's the same way. Do his job and do it better than him. It kind of reminds me of that thing, the Men in Black, right? The difference between you and I is I make this suit look good, right? Somebody could win with your hand. We have to remember that each child is going to go express themselves in the world in the way that they see fit. But a lot of their exposure and teachings and lessons and things that they're exposed to as children can play out for them in positive ways or negative ways. And in many ways, like me as their mom and my husband as their dad, we can't control all of that, but we can definitely say with some pretty good confidence that you didn't learn that from us. There's a big thing going on about that we want to talk about later, which is about kindness and the culture of kindness that you cultivate for your family, so that they go out into the world and treat people with respect. And so whenever something that we know is not part of our family culture happens in front of us, we clearly draw the line in the sand and say, we did not teach you that. We do not speak like that. We do not believe that to be true. Where did you hear it from? And then we isolate wherever they heard it or saw it or found it. And we tell them, let me adjust your facts on that one. Let me tell you what we feel about that one. And we get them back to the side of our family's values. And hopefully what we're ultimately trying to do is align them with winning behaviors. Align them with decisions that help them grow, not help them, not help them squander their resources and, opportunities. So you want your children to be independent and self-sufficient, And in order to kind of get there, you're going to have to teach them how to fish, not teach them that there's fish in the pond, right? Like that you're going to fish for them and hand it to them. Like, so yes, we're definitely raising, kids who are capable of doing it themselves. And here's a little thing that I learned kind of along the way is that children go through these different developmental milestones. And if you do not continue to check in with what phase they're in, you can overlap doing things that they should be capable of doing. And there's like a bunch of things you can pull up about it as far as like what chores are appropriate for a 5-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old, and then what chores are appropriate for a 9, 10, 11-year-old, right? And it continues to get more difficult or more complicated as they're able to handle the responsibilities of the first things. But I think it's wonderful to pull up a list of that and just like put it on the fridge and remind yourself that when you are saying, like for me, and an example for me anyway, is make your beds. Like at this point, I know that my 6-year-old and my 10-year-old can make their bed. And I do not require them to make it to my level of expertise. Or even really my dad's level, because he's a military man and those corners had to be tight, let me tell you. But I do require them to make the effort and to smooth out the blankets and to definitely have their pillows, properly on their bed and things like that. So knowing what your child is capable of doing at their age, and then definitely putting it as a requirement, for lack of a better word, but like putting it as something that you expect them to do and encourage them to do on their own will foster independence later in life. So it's just a little trick that I use. Number 11, we're chugging along. Let's see. Number 11, not spending enough quality time with their children. So some moms express regret about the quality time and the bonding, right, that creates lasting memories for their children, that they didn't do enough of that. I will say when my mom called me one time and she said, I really admire that you play with your kids. Like you and your husband play with your kids. You guys do activities with them. She's like, I don't really remember playing with you guys. And I would say, childhood's funny. Like you remember like traditions, you remember like key things with your siblings and stuff. Everybody remembers different things about their childhood. I tend to remember like the traditions and the things that happened regularly more than I do like the different private, moments I had, with my parents and like my mom or my sister or whatever. And so I think you might regret that as your own personal, feeling towards motherhood. And I think your kids overall would feel like, no, you were there for me. So I think, that could be kind of multi-layered, but I think it's important to think about because, again, slowing down, being 100% present, and then maybe carving out what quality time means for your family. And that I think that's really the fun thing about like watching other families and how they interact and engage with each other. Everybody's got their own signature. They have their own like vibe. Some families, their quality time is in the car. Some families, their quality time is in the yard. So what I would say is based on your family's vibe, meaning how the synergy is between all of the people in your family, I would pick a location that makes the most sense for your family. And then I would focus on throwing quality time behind that. So I know a lot of families. So there's families that the beach time is their quality time. There's families that go to their cabin, and the woods and like hiking is their quality time. There's families where they're, like I said, their front yard. There's families that go on walks together. I see them all the time. They walk all over the place. They walk to get ice cream. They walk to, just enjoy the day. whatever it is, but it's very unique to that family. And I think that not putting too much like weight on this idea of like, oh, we don't have a lot of quality time, I'm going to regret that. And just focus on like one signature thing that is your family's thing. And then do that. Do that a lot. Right? I know families who do. I'm just trying to give you some ideas in case you're like, oh, I just don't know what it is. You already do it. Chances are you already do it. Unless you just brought baby home, you already do this. So that would be like a big hint. Okay. This is something your family already does and they naturally enjoy. And what you're going to do is just push more energy towards it. Like make it more intentional. Okay. Here's another idea. One family I know does a Friday night pizza night where they make their own pizzas together. If you don't want to make pizzas, order pizzas. If you don't want to order pizza, buy a pizza from the store, put it in the oven. Popcorn. If you don't want to buy pizza, like it could be anything, but it's unique to your family. And I think that would help you not regret that kind of quality time and the bonding that generates a memory from it. Because memories, they either are really big moments that you just cannot forget, or they are a consistent small moment that you will never forget. So don't disregard the small traditional things that you can do with your children that they will remember just how that makes them feel over time. Okay? And that will create just a memory of childhood for them. Number 12, we're chugging along. We only have a couple more left. Number 12, not seeking professional guidance or parenting resources. Some moms regret not seeking this guidance, right? So they can navigate the challenges of raising children. I don't know if we, I know families that lean way more into professional, like therapists, counselors, family, type counseling, support like that. And I know families that lean into the information from professionals where they'll do, and I've done it too, where you sign up for parenting websites and seminars. And of course, your library is a great resource for parenting books and things. There's wonderful authors. There's great podcasts out there to listen to. I don't think there's websites. I don't think there is a shortage of professional guidance for parenting. What I would say is, what this regret kind of sounds like to me anyway, is if you had a particular problem and you got a bunch of like really vague, non-specific advice around it, and then you had that problem longer than you needed to. That's what I would probably say if I could think back to like some things I needed professional guidance. I needed to ask the right person the right question for the right problem. That would be a regret of mine of not doing that sooner. For sure. You can use this professionally too. I don't ask anybody anything that I don't ask for advice from people who are not who I want to be or where I want to be. If they're not who I want to be, who I want to become, or where I want to be in life, whether that's tangible or intangible, I do not ask them about my problem or my situation or ask for their advice about it. I just don't. And if I happen to get in a conversation and someone just offers up their advice or offers up, whatever, I take it with a grain of salt, which is an old term for I take the pieces that I need and I leave the rest, and that's just me, personal preference, of always going to the expert who can give you the best quality answer for your problem. That we should definitely be doing that. I totally get that regret. Number 13, not being more patient and understanding. Some moms regret not being understanding with their children during challenging moments. The story of a mother's life is not being more patient. Patience is wonderful. Patience and compassion is really, really a wonderful thing. I love to see when when some things just roll off of a parent's back, and it's like that would infuriate me or that would drive me crazy. I don't know how they kept their composure. Um, I think it goes back to self-care and sleep. There are some things that do not bother me anymore. I think it's almost should be like a mantra. I don't care about that. Like there were so many things, especially early on in raising the children, my children, that I really cared about. And I cared about strongly, and it upset me, and it caused way too much stress. Way too much stress, way too much drama, way too much conflict with my kids. And I've taken the attitude of I don't care about that. Now, I might care in the run about behaviors, right? Um, but I don't care about that specifically. And I guess what I'm trying to say is like picking and choosing your battles with your children. There's some things that don't require you to show up in full armor and full on like have a war about. And I used to do that. I used to show up fully ready to have a battle. I am not trying to win battles anymore. I'm trying to win the war. And to win the war for me means that I am trying to develop a fully formed, capable individual who has some sense of what's right and what's wrong, what's good and what's bad, what's for them, what's not for them. And they can take their own, path in life. Like that, for me, that's ultimately the war of what I'm fighting for as a mom and as a parent. Will they look back and remember that I, lost my top and like flipped out about how much video time they were watching all the time and all that stuff? It's like, I don't want to I don't want to make you miserable. I'm just going to create boundaries, be very, very clear about those boundaries, hold the line about those boundaries, and move on and choose not to care about that specific battle. And that's really, really helped me. So I hope that whoever needed to hear that they don't have to go to war over every little thing. I hope that you decide to not care about some of those smaller things in life. And in the effort of not caring, then now you reserve that energy for yourself, and you create more space to be compassionate to your children and patient with your children. Because if you are willing to fight, with your kids and like get pulled into their tantrums, their emotional instability all the time, it's just a mess. It's a real mess. And it's really hard to access the patience and compassion to see their perspective and their side when you're so, worked up about winning, right? And about having them change to your side. So we are on number 14 of regrets. Not prioritizing their own mental and emotional well-being. So when you're focused completely on your children and their experience, you tend to ignore your own experience. Again, like I didn't realize I was so focused on winning these battles and stuff that I was driving myself crazy. I was making myself uncomfortable. I was making myself miserable. And ultimately, when you keep doing that over and over again, your emotional and mental well-being is in the trash. I mean, it's so easy. And I'm not talking about just when you have baby and bring baby home, because you have to be careful with postpartum and stuff and like the emotions and the hormones. But I would say, having a 6-year-old now being, 6 years out from all of that feeling, and hormonal stuff, I would say looking at my children clearly now at this point, my mental and emotional well-being has to be a priority so that I am not a cuckoo bird with these kids. Just say it that way. So the way that I prioritize that is like I said, I do things for my self-care. I take mental breaks. I pursue some of my own interests, things that make me happy, things that bring me joy. I read books with 2 book clubs now. I read things that I wouldn't necessarily choose, and I hear narratives and stories that I don't often do, and I entertain myself. My emotional well-being. I talk with you on this podcast. I share things, with my friends, and things, and I just get that weight off of my shoulders. And that allows me to be more present, more calm, more loving, more patient with my family, with my children. Um, so we are on 15, the last and final regret. And it is feeling unprepared and lacking knowledge about the realities of parenthood. Some moms express regret of not having a better understanding of the reality of having children. Look, nobody could tell you better than experience can show you. I'll just put it that way. When I see other moms, when I see women who are pregnant and they're becoming moms for the first time, I have a bit of excitement and a bit of trepidation for the road that they're about to travel, because there's nothing like it. It has, as I like to say, incredible highs and incredible lows and everything in between. And there's practically nothing that can prepare you for the individualized journey of bringing a child into this world and then holding the hand of them as they develop and they go through everything and you go through everything with them. It's wild. It's wild. It takes a lot of courage. Patience is an understatement. Children are mirrors. They are little mirrors. The things that you dislike, and maybe even things you didn't even know that were inside of you to dislike, you better believe it's going to be reflected back to you in real time, in the flesh, as your child. And what you do with those reflections, baby, I mean, ultimately, that's the formation of what I'm talking about and the self-work that I've been going through for so long since I became a mother and a little bit before that, of asking those questions of what do I believe? Why do I believe it? And moving forward with some sense of clarity about why we're doing what we're doing as people and why it means anything. So parenting, motherhood, womanhood, all of it rolled up into one is a lot. I mean, I don't think there's very many mothers who are done. Well, you're never really done mothering, right? But I don't really think there's very many mothers who have done this, who have walked this road, that would not give you both sides to the coin. And that is one thing I would say about it is that it can be massively rewarding for a lot of different reasons. And it could be massively disappointing for a lot of different reasons. And I think that the two exist at the same time. And I think that therein lies the conflict and the struggle and the pain of the beautiful pain of the decision to try to be even an iota of a great mother to someone. Which, again, we'll have other conversations about that. But I really, really want to leave you with this. Regrets are subjective. They vary, okay? They're not universal. Every mother has a very unique experience. And what I want to offer to you today is that you have an option. If you are in the thick of it, you have an option to feel like you can control some of these outcomes that usually feel like they're out of our control. And some of those outcomes revolve around you and what your choices are. So save yourself the trouble of 15, items on your regret list and just say, I'm going to figure out what's important to me as a mom ultimately, and then I'm going to show up for my children in that way. So you may not have the whole list of 15 things that you would regret. And I don't want to imply that a mom would regret 15 things or 20 things or whatever. It might be one thing you regret. If you can look forward and say, if I don't change this today, I would regret that later, change it today. I want to encourage you to change it today. You are capable of changing some outcomes. And ultimately, life is going to unfold the way life unfolds, right? If you have already raised your children and you're looking back and you're having regrets, I would say take that list, sit down, take a list of the things that you regret and rewrite it. Rewrite it from the compassionate, loving space of, I did my very best that I knew how to do at that time, and forgive yourself and love your children and love yourself. Okay? So this is another episode of You Are Poetry Podcast. I am Rheta, and I am so grateful that you have shared your time with me today. If you could follow my podcast, that would be wonderful. If you could share it with a friend, that would be even better. And I look forward to our next conversation. Have a good day.